Hello there, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Long Live Rock and Roll podcast. Now, it deeply sad. Actually, do you know what? It doesn't sadden me. We knew this day would come, and I'm going to make this number sound as big as possible. We've done 1/4 episodes face to face with me and Felipe in the same room, but inevitably we are now on Zoom. Technology has taken over. Petrol prices are high. Train tickets are ridiculous. We can't just get to each other. We're not on tour, so we had to resort to Zoom. Felipe is on the screen with me. How you doing, man?
How you doing, man? Hello, everyone. So here's Felipe from the other screen instead of on Lazarus' side. So yeah, here I am. I hope everyone is doing well. I hope everyone is coping with the heat. And here we are.
I can't cope with it. I hate it. It's just horrible. So what's the drink today, Felipe?
So today's show is sponsored by water.
Oh, water. We all need it. Like, water doesn't need an advert, does it? It's just kind of like, You have to drink it. Just come on. Excellent. Well, do you want to introduce the album we're talking about today? Because it was your pick.
Yeah, that was my pick. And the album was called Audioslave. And the band, guess the name. So Laz, let me start this by asking you, what do you know about them?
So I know that Audioslave is a supergroup, isn't it? Well, it is a supergroup. It is the rhythm. I say the rhythm section. It is the instrumentalists of Rage Against the Machine and the singer of Soundgarden.
Yeah, it's a really, really cool combination if you think about it. Well, one thing I want to talk about before we talk about this band and the album is like the concept of a supergroup, because we've mentioned that when we're talking about Cream, isn't it? They were considered a supergroup at the time.
And Emerson, Lake and Palmer.
Emerson, Lake and Palmer as well, yeah. So, because Emerson, Lake and Palmer, or Greg Lake was playing with King Crimson before them, so they all came from other bands. So the idea of supergroup is like established musicians who are already famous and, in most cases, wealthy. So they just get together. So they have the fame, they have the money, they have the time to do it, and they challenge themselves to do something. In most cases, that doesn't resemble much of the original bands, isn't it? Because musicians, they like to prove themselves. Like, so, you know what? I'm not that guy from that band anymore. I want to do something different. And I think Audioslave's got a lot of that.
That's really interesting. You said that it's you used the word musicians, but I actually think sometimes you said that for the musicians that are already famous, but I think it's also the bands, isn't it?
Yeah,
not just the individuals, but the artists they play with or for or in. Those are the ones also who I think, if that band gains fame, maybe the musicians aren't necessarily known in that, but you can still form a supergroup from members of famous bands, I think.
Yeah, exactly. So that in that case, it was actually, if you think about it, it was a simple lineup change. They've replaced the singer. But no one can actually see it like that because it's a different band, it's a different concept altogether.
Let's go straight in with Laz Unleashed. Right, so starting off, because you've put this in perfectly. Here is my Laz. I say Laz Unleashed, but that's just because it's the name of the segment. What it is kind of a discussion debate point for us to have now.
Right.
I find it odd that the changing of a voice can count as a new band. When you think of Deep Purple, Iron Maiden, Black Sabbath, Sepultura, they've all changed singers, but they've stayed the same band. So
in this case, they didn't.
But Rage Against the Machine changed singer. No?
Yeah, exactly. It's exactly what it is, but it isn't at the same time. So your Laz Unleashed as Rage Against the Machine just changed singer.
But then that's a detriment to Chris Cornell because obviously he brings a lot to this band. And I understand it's a new thing. I just found it interesting thinking about it that, hold on, so actually, and when we get into the music, I think the music is quite similar to both of these, to Rage Against the Machine and Soundgarden. So I just found it interesting that all these other famous bands, I think most notably, I'd say Black Sabbath, because the change in vocal style from Ozzy Osbourne to Dio is very, very significant.
But didn't it change the band?
Yeah. It changed the band for an album, and it became a new experience, I believe.
I believe that musicians, when they're playing, and I'm specifically talking about musicians, not singers.
Okay.
Good musicians, they don't act, they react. So they listen to something and they play something that matches whatever they're listening to. So being the singer, sometimes the main guy in the band, if the singer is different, you're going to play in a different way. If you are a good musician, you can react to what you're listening. You're probably going to play and write in a different way because you have a different voice.
Excellent. That was an interesting thing to start with. As Felipe said, so we are doing the album Audioslave by the band Audioslave. This album came out in November of 2002. My God, man, that's 20 years ago. And it's an hour and 5 minutes long, and it was produced by Rick Rubin. And you know something really lovely? I don't know if you've clocked onto this, but my wife just came up and told me before we recorded. Today, Wednesday, 20th of July, it's Chris Cornell's birthday.
That is
Did you know this when you suggested the album?
I had no. I didn't think of it. I didn't do a research on him specifically, or any of that kind of information. That's
the rock and roll gods have shined down on us. The stars have aligned.
The rock and roll gods gave us inspiration to choose this topic. So
exactly.
Well, let's celebrate Chris Cornell's life and music.
I know we do.
Yeah, so sorry. You mentioned Rick Rubin. There is. I read something about the fact that he suggested Cornell to the band, but Tom Morello was already friends with him.
Do you know how they were friends? Because I've heard that before, but I just don't remember how they became.
No? I think they just met in some sort of music award thing together. That's how people meet, when they're famous. But the thing is, Rick Rubin, as a producer, he knows what sounds good, right? So he thought, you know what? You need a new singer. This guy is the voice you need. But here's the thing. It's not a change of singer because what's his name? Zach De La Rocha. Is that his name? The original singer. Yeah. He was kind of people are going to crucify me for this, but more like a rapper. Or
I think that's the only way to put it. I wouldn't describe it as anything else. I wouldn't call him a singer. He is a rapper.
Not like a melodic singer by any extent. I can't. Yeah, I wouldn't perceive him as that. So it's not like only changing the singer. So basically, the reason why Audioslave is a completely different band, not a lineup change, is because Chris Cornell, and that has everything to do with the album we're talking about. Because as the first album, they only released two, actually, whole albums. Three full ones, yeah. 3 albums. So it's like a very short career for a band. But the first album, they knew it would be a statement, right? Well, wait a minute. There's a new supergroup in town. So everyone's going to be talking about it. What's the main difference? Why should I listen to this instead of Rage Against the Machine or Soundgarden? So as soon as he joined the band, before they started writing, recording together, Chris Cornell said he didn't want to follow the political footsteps of Rage Against the Machine. And that is, in my opinion, why they are so different. Rage Against the Machine, they had the political views. They would make political statements like set fire to the American flag on stage, all of that. And here's a quote from Chris Cornell, which really defines what the album is about in that sense. What is the main difference between the two bands, between Rage Against the Machine and Audioslave, in my opinion?
Let's hear it.
Cornell said let me quote him exactly. He said, "I would be pretending if I tried to write politically motivated lyrics all the time." So
but that's what Rage Against the Machine is about, isn't it?
Exactly. Rage Against the Machine. It's in the name.
Even in the name.
Yeah, the cue's in the name. The clue's in the name. So it's like, it's what we're talking about. Politics all the time. So it's Rage Against the Machine. So they're talking about the machine, talk about the system, the things they don't agree with, whilst Audioslave is not about that. And I think it's more personal. I think it's actually very, very personal, and that's the beauty of the album. I started I actually read every single verse of these albums, reading all the lyrics, and it's beautiful. It's poetry. So when the interview that Chris Cornell did for Entertainment Weekly, when he said what I said here, that he didn't want to be political. So the guy who wrote the article actually defined Cornell's lyrics as haunted existential poetry.
Is that his lyrics throughout his career, or just for this album?
I think for this album.
Okay.
But
so I was just going to say that me and Dash, my wife, we're such huge Soundgarden fans, and the lyrics are always very deep and dark, and I've never heard anything political in them, which attests to what you said about him never having written political lyrics.
Isn't it like so? Art reflects the essence of whoever's writing that thing. If you're honest about your art, if you're honest about what you're writing and talking about, and what Cornell said, I would be pretending. So he didn't want to pretend. He wanted to talk about something else. So if it feels to me like Rage Against the Machine was about the world, and the and Audioslave is about the individuals, about one human being talking about his view of the world, of feelings and other people, more than political facts or ideas. It's all about this is how I feel, and it's do you know what I found quite disturbing about this album is there's like loads and loads of references to death and suicide.
Really? And we know, for listeners who don't know, Chris Cornell did kill himself back in 2017, really tragically. There was this mix-up. There was something about the drugs he was taking, not heroin or anything, but he was on antidepressants. And his wife has come out and said that she thinks... I remember she got off the phone with him, and she knew something wasn't right, and she called his personal security guard to go to the room about an hour after the phone call, because I think she was texting him and he wasn't responding. Yeah. And the guy went to the room and he died. He'd killed himself, but she knew something was up. She said she thinks the mix of antidepressants he was taking screwed with his head, basically. But he was a very, very depressed and sad guy anyway at that stage. Really tragic. And it's a shame to obviously have to mention this on his birthday, but it is what it is. But it doesn't surprise me that a lot of his lyrics are quite dark and full of stuff like that.
Well, that's the thing. So that comes a new segment now, which you might want to introduce.
Oh, I shall. Yeah, we've got this new segment, and here we go. It's going to be one of my favorites. Let me introduce you to Felipe's Conspiracies.
Right.
So what this segment is going to be, go on, you explain it.
Why conspiracy? No, it's not conspiracy at all. Because every time you just you start, coming up with theories about something, and then someone's going to say, "Oh, yeah, you're in that case," which sometimes I am, sometimes everyone is. But in this case, it's just like it's a very simple thing, which you might agree with, and it's totally related to what we just said.
Okay.
If you consider that the album was released, 10, 11 years before his death,
15.
Is that more than
15.
that? More than that? 15 years.
Yeah, so 2002, and he killed himself in 2017.
Yeah, I think, so that's my theory. So don't quote me on this. No, quote me on this, but
attribute the quote to him.
It's not this. Yeah, so this segment is not based on any research.
Wait. Is this where I get to say Felipe's views are not reflected by Laz?
Yes, you can make the disclaimer now. Yeah.
Go ahead, man.
Yeah, exactly. So what I believe is he was like for a long time flirting with death.
Mm.
He was already haunted, and he was already disturbed with the world and his own feelings. And because the amount of references to death in an album, there is actually a rebirth. Is a band starting from the ashes of two bands, and it's kind of something powerful and positive. And the songs are kind of really energetic, aren't they?
Yeah.
There's distorted guitars, heavy grooves, but the lyrics are as dark as Soundgarden's lyrics, and it feels like he was always in a dark place. That's my theory. There you go.
Well, no, I mean, it's a very good point. And I think, he openly spoke out about his depression, I think, on several occasions a few years before his death. And there's a DVD that me and Dash watch. I've got the posters behind me. What's it called? Live at the Artist's Den. And it's a fantastic gig from Soundgarden, by the way. Absolutely stunning show. But there's just this haunting essence around him, where he's giving the performance of his life, and he is performing stunningly. His vocals are on point, but even just the way he looks at the camera and you look into his eyes as the audience, you just know that there's something wrong. He's not in a good place. And that was, I don't actually know when that was released, so I don't want to put a time on it.
So maybe he struggled with that for a long time, and it's for touring musicians, it's not easy to be in a dark place. So it's an interesting point there. I think we talk about a lot about him, and obviously he had this beautiful, strong voice, and technically perfect, in my opinion.
My wife. Really good. I know but my wife's a vocal coach, and Chris Cornell is her favorite singer. Technically, he's stunning. I keep forgetting, but we do the playlist, don't we? So we can put a few of them in. I'll find some now, just a few of Chris's ones. But his voice is just perfect, isn't it? There's just so little that he couldn't achieve.
Yeah, and I think the production of the album is amazing. He captured the essence of his vocals. I believe they recorded quite a lot of stuff at the same time, jamming as a band. Like, I'm not quite sure, but I've heard that they played together.
Interestingly, I just wanted to mention this because the album was recorded between May 2001 and June 2002. That's a year. And I feel, and it was recorded between 5 different studios in California and Washington. So it gives me the impression that they recorded for maybe a week here, and then 5 months later, a week there, then a month after that, another week, or something like that. Because I feel like you can hear that in the songs across the album. I feel like there are groups of songs that were probably written together, and then other groups of songs that might have been, Chris Cornell bought this song, or Tom Morello bought this song. And then there's also a bunch of songs which you think all of the band might have been together when writing. Did you see?
Yeah.
Did you understand?
Yeah,
there's quite a few style differences on the album.
Yeah, there is. But the thing is, they still, as a band, the instrumental part of it is still, in my opinion, sounds a lot like Rage Against the Machine. And those guys, they could groove together, right? They had their sound. They found a formula for their sound, and they've managed to stick to it. And I don't think it's boring or repetitive, but there is a formula there.
Yeah,
there is a way of playing that they do all the time. They have that same vibe and groove. It's slightly funky and dark. I think they have the aggression of Rage Against the Machine plus the darkness of Soundgarden. I think that's very evident in the album.
But there's quite a lot of heavy stuff on there as well. There's 2 songs. I'm trying to remember which ones they are. But Chris Cornell actually does a heavy metal scream at the end of them.
Yeah, I think there's a song, Shadow on the Sun. At the very end, is just screaming, and we're going to talk about that song. So let's talk about songs, right? The songs in the album. We talked about a lot about the band. Let's talk about the album. So Shadow on the Sun. I'm not going to mention the songs in any particular order, right?
Let's do it. Let's
So
just talk about them and move from one to the other. Yeah, we'll just do them.
Yeah. So that one it is for me a heavy ballad with really dark lyrics. So there's one specific part that I took note of it, which is again how disturbing this is. To live without a soul and nothing to be learned. And he literally talks about people going insane. He uses that to go insane, people go insane kind of stuff. Yeah. So he's talking about that, like going insane. But it's a kind of a ballad, it's not.
I love that. I thought that was a lovely one. I thought the song was so beautifully built up because it takes you on a journey, because it starts off soft for the first minute, then you get a chorus which I don't know is kind of 80% heavy, then you got the second verse which is the same as the first verse but it's a bit heavier, then you got a bridge, and then the final chorus is just so big and beefy and heavy. I love the journey it built you up on, but you're right, it's just a heavy ballad.
It is, and they do, again talking about formulas, they do that a lot in this album, which is to start light with some sort of guitar effect or something that sounds like keyboards. It's just effects and very subtle, and out of the blue it just explodes into a riff. So you'd never know what's going to come up. Kind of know that something heavy is going to come up, but when and how fast it's going to be. So some common elements of the album for me are like introductions that are building the anticipation, like what's going to happen, like
my favorite,
and it doesn't go straight. And there is the tempos of the songs are never fast. There's no fast songs in the album. Think about it.
Right. And do you know what? This is a note I've also got about Soundgarden. Very few fast-tempoed songs there. I mean, I suppose it's different when I'm trying to think about Rage Against the Machine now, and I wouldn't say there's any sort of super fast songs. I think there's songs that have a higher tempo than Soundgarden, but with Soundgarden, it naturally fits the genre, doesn't it? Grunge, and just the word grunge, you think slow, heavy, lazy, laboured, and so I think it fits with Soundgarden. But I agree here, there's a lot of upbeat, energetic songs that aren't necessarily fast.
No, they're not fast, not really fast. The tempos are not fast. And the grooves are simple. They actually, because I think the main idea of a good groove is you have a rhythmic idea that repeats itself. It repeats and repeats and repeats. So you got to stick to some sort of beat to actually call it a groove. It can't be changing every single time. And the grooves are quite solid in that sense. And the drummer, Brad Wilk, he actually recorded with Black Sabbath their last studio album. Recommended by the producer, who's the same guy, isn't he? I think it's him. Yeah. And he's got that Sabbath vibe, That's that, which is like slow down, be playing heavy and playing slow, and it's that kind of vibe, and I think that says a lot about the album. I do believe, though, the bass player is playing a different style. I think he's the guy who changed his approach the most from the original band to this
album.
Yeah, because he is less busy, isn't he?
I'd agree.
Compared to Rage Against
that. You mentioned
Tim Comerford, isn't it?
Tim Comerford, fantastic player. You mentioned something about the build-up of the songs, and I just wanted to draw note to the first song. I don't know how you say it. Is it Cochise? Cochise, I guess. Cochise? Okay, let's go for that.
Cheese?
You Brazilians, I know how much you love your cheese. That's why I went with Cochise. That's a 48-second build-up. It builds up for 48 seconds. And I don't mean a build up like, which song was it? Shadow on the Sun, which is like a 10-second intro. Then it's his vocals, but lightly. I don't mean that build up where they're just adding layer by layer from a verse to a chorus. I mean, this is just 48 seconds of the band just building up.
Is it ever going to get there?
When it hits, it is stunning. It's just fantastic song, and I think what a way to start an album.
Exactly. I mean, it does. I think ideally the first song would set the tone for whatever album album concept that you have, and they actually did that really well on this one.
Yeah.
So there's there's something about the song, about the lyrics as well, that I really like, and it does help to set the tone as well. And as a part, I'll make this clear. I've asked Lars to read
I'll get them
his
up.
lyrics out loud, so he's going to do it.
Do you know,
because I think you have a good voice, for radio. And
when you sent me that message, when you told me you wanted me to read these, do you know what I thought? I thought, you remember in Arrested Development when Lucille 2 asks Job to read the menu because he's got that voice. And she's like, tell me the sides, Job. And he's like, how about club sauce with a side of mayonnaise? Do you remember that one, don't you?
Exactly. So you can do Job's voice if you want, or you can do your own voice. I think it's a bit dark, isn't it, as well? Yeah. So, but
right, here we go. I'm not a martyr, I'm not a prophet, and I won't preach to you, but here's a caution. You better understand that I won't hold your hand, but if it helps you mend, then I won't stop it. Go on and save yourself and take it out on me. Right. I'm not a martyr, I'm not a prophet. Wouldn't that be, I'm not talking about the same subjects that these guys were talking before? I don't want to go, well, I'm not going to get into the same political stuff. It feels to me there's like, I see. Right? I'm not a martyr. Right. So when you talk about being a prophet, being a martyr, it means you are doing something for, let's put it, for the collective or for society. You're talking about people. You're not talking about a person. You're talking about people. So for me, what he was saying there, again, just a theory, what he was saying there's like, I'm not talking about collective ideas here. I'm talking about personal stuff. So why not? I mean, it's a different approach. And, you better understand that I won't hold your hand. So I'm not connecting with you. I'm not really. So I'm not talking about your reality and society's problems. I'm not holding your hand. I'm not there with you. Can I ask, are you talking, when you think this, are you thinking Chris Cornell? When you say I'm not talking to you as Chris Cornell, do you mean him talking to the public or to the three members of Rage Against the Machine? It could be everything. I think he was so disconnected from everything and everyone that he was talking about his own personal views. What I think is beautiful about that, we've been really philosophical today, isn't it? What I think is beautiful about that is that when an artist is not talking about society, is talking about him or herself, they still communicating with millions of people. Because how many people share the same feelings and perceptions and so he could be actually communicating with millions of people by just talking about himself and his own personal feelings, not like society's issues. Didn't we spoke about that when all the way back in episode 5 when we were still doing podcasts next to each other. When we in the dark side of the moon. Yeah, the Dark Side of the Moon, we spoke about Roger Waters, his lyrics, finally addressing people. You said that the most used word on that album, on the Dark Side of the Moon, is the word you. You. And it feels to me that Chris Cornell is talking about himself. It's more me than you. Yeah, but isn't it the same thing? Because in the same way, just that's a comparison I would never consider to make Waters and Cornell because they're so different. But you can see, they're so different, as in they go so far away from each other, but then they come back. They come back exactly. Like it feels like that to me because it's Waters was talking about the human feelings, like the very personal things, but he was pointing at people like I'm talking about you, but not you, society, you, the person, and Chris Cornell was like, I'm talking about me, this person here, but you can obviously feel some of the feelings I feel. I think that's it's funny because we're talking for so long here about lyrics and feelings and that aspect of the music,
But the instrumentation in the album is just brilliant.
Yeah.
I believe it's really, really good. There's so many good unisons between bass and guitar, like playing the same riff in a very solid way. And I like that. But anyway, I think apart from the disturbing lyrics, the biggest contrast to that is the groovy, funky vibes that they come up with from time to time in the songs.
But you said already they're experts at it. They've done it for so long that they know what they're doing.
Yeah, exactly. Well. One of the songs I highlight is slightly funky, and you can clearly see that the bass and the guitar playing unison, playing the same idea, reinforcing the idea. Is Set It Off is a great song with guitar effects on the intro, and guitar effects are Tom Morello's main signature, isn't it? It's like, what kind of weird noise is coming out of that guitar? It's like insane.
There's actually a few of them I've noted have sort of the signature Tom Morello sound. Like a Stone had the guitar effects. Which other one did I have? Bring 'Em Back Alive. The guitar solo was just so Tom Morello.
Oh yeah, I mean, and I think there's a Sabbath vibe there for some reason. And the solo is weird. I can't describe it in any other way. It's just like, what the hell is going on? I like that because it's not like it's the opposite of Slash, who I love. Slash is about the melody, and he doesn't do that in most of the time. Morello's like, okay, I'm going to play some weird noises here that somehow, and strangely, match the feeling of the song, and it makes it work. And it's I've seen a video of him like describing how he found his guitar sound. He was trying to find the perfect EQ combinations, like bass, medium trebles, and effects. And he got tired of trying to find and didn't find anything. He said, you know what? I'm going to stop at the configuration I have now. The levels, the EQ, this is it, and I'm going to try to make it sound good as it is. And it was totally random.
Wow.
So I will play. So he plays the guitar in a way that suits the sound that is coming out of his pedals and amplifiers and guitars. So it's like, I got this sound, I turned the guitar into this kind of instrument with these sounds, with these kind of setup, and I have to make it sound melodic with what I have in my hand now.
Yeah. Let me talk for a second. I want to talk. This is something I suppose I wanted to say at the end of the show, but I think it makes sense now that we can discuss it. I am a big fan of both Soundgarden and Rage Against the Machine. So what I've discerned, having listened to and made notes on this album, is that my favorite songs on the album, I'll just list them quickly. So my favorite ones, Cochise, I think that's a no-brainer because I knew that before I'd heard the rest of the album. It's just that classic hit from that band. But What You Are, Like a Stone, Shadow of the Sun, I Am the Highway, Getaway Car, and The Last Remaining Light. Those 6 are my favorite ones. And what I noticed about those is that those are the ones that sound as far away from Soundgarden and Rage Against the Machine. And the reason why is because, as I said, I'm a huge Rage Against the Machine fan and an even bigger Soundgarden fan. This is going to sound like a criticism, and I suppose it is, but it's not necessarily, it's not an awful criticism. When listening to things like Gasoline, Set It Off, Exploder, Hypnotize, I was thinking, yeah, it's good, but I'd rather just go and listen to Rage, or I'd rather just go and listen to Soundgarden. Whereas
Hypnotize has got like an extra funky vibe. It reminds me a bit of Red Hot Chili Peppers, but again, you can find those elements in Rage Against the Machine. It's not new, right?
Yeah. So I found it interesting that my favorite songs are the ones that actually deviated from the standard Rage Against the Machine sound or the standard Soundgarden sound, because loads of these songs have taken the best elements of Soundgarden from Chris Cornell's voice and maybe some riffs he wrote. I don't know how much he brought to this album, and the best elements of Rage Against the Machine, and they've kind of mixed them together. But I'll be honest, when listening to which one was it? I think Gasoline and Set It Off, somewhere inside my brain just wanted to hear some Zach De La Rocca. And the same way with the Soundgarden stuff. Again, I was saving this for the end, but I'll tell you my opinion on the album. Less is more. And I feel that simple riffs work much better with Chris's voice, because his voice is so free and so powerful. It is the center stage. It is the main thing of the song. Whereas Zach De La Rocca, there's no melody. It's another rhythm to the music. It's not the center. It's not the center of attention like Chris's voice is. So the things I worked out. Where is it? Let me just find it quickly. Bring 'Em Back Alive. Now, like I just said, Exploder and Hypnotize and Set It Off. Very Rage Against the Machine instrumentation with Soundgarden vocals. Bring 'Em Back Alive is exactly the same as them, but there is a simplicity in the riff. The riff is not overcomplicated. And so I think because the riff of Bring 'Em Back Alive is so simple, it gives Chris's voice the space it needs to flourish and be the center of attention. Whereas for me, a song like Hypnotize, again, fantastic songs, no criticisms of the songs, but it was just a bit too much going on, a bit too much in the guitar and bass, and Chris's voice is almost trying to compete with it for me. So I just thought it was really interesting that when you sort of split them apart, the songs that were least like Soundgarden / Rage Against the Machine were my favorites, because I thought this is different. This is unique.
It is, isn't it? I think the idea of a supergroup is, can musicians keep challenging themselves and actually recreate themselves and not be a shadow of their previous bands? And Audioslave commercially was huge. Like, there's some supergroups that don't actually achieve that. They are literally just the shadow of the previous bands, and they actually managed to achieve that. Some people might not like the more commercial side of it, but I think it's brilliant. Just mentioning from Bring Them Back Alive, because you've mentioned one of my favorite songs in the album. You have, the weird solo, the Sabbath vibe. We have that kind of dark, heavy rock. But there's, again, in terms of lyrics, I want to highlight this point. They buried me where no one can see. It's one of the most clear references to death. And he used the word me. So that's like, they buried me where no one can see. So it's, again, very dark and disturbing. I'll put it like that. But Getaway Car, okay, that's the other one you mentioned I really like. Beautiful that just song. Makes me feel like I want to hit the road.
Yeah, I know.
Going nowhere. I want to go nowhere.
It's really funny. You mentioned it, but you actually didn't mention the two songs I have it noted. Track 8, I Am the Highway, and track 13, Getaway Car. Within 15 to 20 seconds, I'm thinking Chili Peppers.
Yeah, Getaway Car is as I say, it makes me like want to hit the road. And there's a bit of a swing feel in it. It's swung, it's not straight. So for people who know about music theory, it's more like a shuffle than a straight groove. It's triplets based. It's swung. It's like it comes from jazz and blues, that kind of vibe, and Red Hot Chili Peppers, they know how to do that as well. So it does have that vibe, and it's for me the most unique song in the album, Getaway Car, because
I agree with you. I think that song and the last song, very unique, very different, very not what we've heard before from their previous bands and from this band.
Maybe a bit more positive, isn't it? I don't know.
I love that you've gone into the lyrics, because obviously I've looked at this musically. We did this with the Beatles. Remember, we did it with Rubber Soul. You went full on lyrics. It was. It's really interesting because it's something you have to consider, because whilst me and my wife with songwriting, or that we're songwriting at the moment, and Dash says to me, so we write a riff. And we've got the riff, and the riffs are in order, and we're writing the lyrics. And she says, "Okay, well, what's the song about?" And I said, "What do you mean? I don't know." And she says, "Well, come on, it has to be about something." And I said, "Well, no, music first, lyrics later." And she's like, "What do you mean?" And I said, "Well, for me, the riff comes." And I said that this song may as well be about Lord of the Rings. Let's just make it a Lord of the Rings song for now, and we can change the lyrics if we need. So for me, I'm very much a music first, lyrics later. But that doesn't mean I discount.
Album.
It's so important.
I used to, and I still write lyrics, and I think it's very connected to everything else in the song. Like if you want to play heavy, it has to be related to heavy lyrics.
Yeah.
Unless you intentionally want to make it sound unpredictable. But just interesting that you've mentioned. I Am the Highway as well, which is, in terms of lyrics, one of my favorites. Again, talking about a personal point of view. It says, I am, that's that all the time. I am not your rolling wheels. I am the highway. I think that's a really, really strong chorus. Like, and it feels to me like I don't want to be told what to do. It's, I'm not the wheels, I'm the highway. Think about that. So like, I am the path. I am the way. I'm doing things my own way. So it's very strong, and I think sounds perfect in his voice, and the band does the job that is expected from a band, which is to make the melody sound stronger and more powerful. And God, everyone, a lot has been said about Like a Stone, beautiful song, major hit. Like I'm checking Spotify.
Oh, Like a Stone,
425 million plays on Spotify. That's insane.
I found it really unique. I thought the guitar effects and tone came straight from Rage Against the Machine, but the rhythm section is what's different. Because if I remember rightly, Tim Comerford on bass, it's just eighth notes, isn't it? And Brad Wilk is just playing a simple groove.
It's the same groove of those things.
It works so well. It works so well because this is where you've taken some aspects of Rage Against the Machine, the guitar tone, some aspects of Soundgarden, the voice, and you've written something different underneath them. And again, I don't want to go on about what I said earlier, but when you took too much from Rage Against the Machine and too much from Soundgarden, it left me just wanting to go and listen to Rage Against the Machine and Soundgarden. Whereas songs like a Stone and What You Are, those felt unique and special to me. And that was the point where I went, yes, apart from Cochise, obviously, but like I said, I knew that before. But those two, tracks 4 and 5, I thought they were so unique and so different, and a real fresh sound from musicians who have already established their musical personality.
What do you think is the what's your favorite thing about this album? Not favorite song, favorite thing, favorite element or aspect of the album.
I mean, I think it's pretty obvious to just say the marriage of two completely different bands, Rage Against the Machine's music and Soundgarden's singer. So what I would say is, you've caught me off guard there.
That's the idea.
Because there was so much familiarity to it. I don't need to say it again. Rage and Soundgarden, there's so much there, different elements, and it's all been molded together lovely. But songs like The Last Remaining Light, Getaway Car, I Am the Highway, Shadow of the Sun, What You Are, Like a Stone, those were fresh and unique. And I love the middle ground that has been found between the projects becoming Audioslave.
Interesting, because it's similar to what I think about the album. Is
maybe you can say it better than I just did. I
don't know. The fact they have it's I think it's like an hour and 5 minutes of music. It's 14 songs. Yeah. It's a long album, right? It's a long album, even for old standards, really. So for early 2000s, an hour-long album, that's a statement. And I think what makes it special is they delivered what people would expect from those previous bands, plus a bit more. So that's
perfect, man. That's a perfect way to say it. Yeah.
They didn't disappoint. I mean, they wouldn't disappoint me if I was a big fan at the time of Soundgarden or Rage Against. And they just came with their own version of what they wanted to do. But the main point for me is they delivered the old stuff that people knew them for.
Yeah.
But they dared to create something new out of it. So there's enough songs in the album to go nuts and try something that you haven't tried before without being criticized, or even if you are criticized, what's the problem? Some songs for me, they were designed to be hits, like I Am the Highway, Like a Stone, I think they were designed in a more commercial way. It's not too aggressive, too heavy. You have some light guitar sounds in it to balance it out. And some songs were not designed to be hits. They were just like what they really wanted to do and what they really wanted to say.
I think I completely agree with you, especially with what you said before. And I think we can. I'm not going to read all the song titles. I'll just say the track numbers. I think you can split them into three categories. The old stuff that the fans for both of those bands would have wanted to hear, the new daring stuff that was fresh and unique, and the perfect balance of both. The perfect balance of both, tracks 1 and 2. The old stuff that fans loved and would wanted, tracks 3, 6, 9, 10, and maybe 11. And the new ones that dared to be different, that was something unique, tracks 14, 13, 12, 8, 7, 5, and 4, in my opinion. I thought I'd say the track numbers instead of saying all the words.
Yeah. So that's, I have to kind of run through it to understand fully what you said, but it does make a lot of sense.
What I did just say there in terms of the splitting it between the three groups, notice that the group that had the most songs, in my opinion, was the new unique ones. So I think this is why it's a special album, because they've done, let's say half of the album was split between keeping the fans happy and a good mixture of both. Yet the other half is the daring, the trying to be different, the unique sound. And I think that's why this album is a success.
In other words, the rock and rollness of the album.
The rock and rollness
musical freedom.
Musical freedom.
It's where they say we're free. We're going to do whatever. Right?
I wanted to ask you something.
There's okay.
You go for it. You wanted to say something. Go for it.
I want to wrap it up with the concept of the cover, because I'm a big fan of album covers, and my favorite artist of all time of the guys who do album covers is Storm Thorgerson. I hope I pronounced it right. I struggle with names and pronunciations for obvious reasons. So Storm Thorgerson, he worked with Pink Floyd, Black Sabbath, Led Zeppelin, Yes, Genesis, Peter Gabriel, you name it, like everyone. So he's the man behind covers. If I'm not wrong, Wish We're Here was him. And he has a point about his covers, which is they're all real. They're all shot in that place like it is. Minimum effects and post-production. So if there's a fire, he's going to set fire to something. It's going to be real fire in the album cover. So he wanted a volcano because he said Cornell's voice reminded him of a volcano and stuff like that. So what a
lovely comparison.
What an artist, that man! I tell you that, because he could capture the idea. So he wanted to go to this specific volcano in Canary Islands, but he wanted to add that flame. On the set. But that flame is made of bronze, is a big sculpture, and it's real. It was built that size. A man, that man in front of that sculpture is Storm himself, is the artist.
Oh, that's what
he said he is there to show the perspective. So how big is that sculpture compared to a man? So that was the main idea right there. He wanted to show a small man and big sculpture. The only kind of special effects trick they did was the sculpture wasn't taken all the way to the volcano. So the place is the volcano, but the sculpture was in a coal mine somewhere in England. I don't know the location. I don't have it here.
Right.
But that was, so they took some pictures of the volcano and they took pictures of that sculpture and they pieced them together. Wow. But here's the concept. What he wanted, again, I want to quote him in with the right words. I don't want to so basically he said the giant piece in the volcano is an eternal flame symbolizing how two deceased bands, Soundgarden and Rage Against the Machine, lived on in the reincarnation called Audioslave.
That's when it means something. That's when art means something. Sometimes I see album covers which look good, but then you just think, well, what's the meaning behind this? But that the quote to go along with that album cover, that means so much, doesn't it, to what this project is about?
They got a genius to design the cover that actually tells the story of the band and the album with one simple picture. They got a fantastic producer who knows how to make anything sound good, commercial and heavy. And they got musicians from a band that didn't want the band to end. The singer left the band. They want to continue. Yeah. They found someone with his own personality to the point that the band needed to change the name. So what an amazing album for all those reasons, right?
Yeah. I wanted to ask you something. So Felipe is the one who chose this album for us to do today. And when you sent this, man, I'll be honest, I found it so odd that you chose this for several reasons. Because one, the latest album we've done up until this point was 1979, I think, Van Halen. Yeah. Number two is that this album is not, when you think of all the albums we've done, this is not one that I'd say is counted as a rock and roll great. You know, we've done Rubber Soul, we've done Led Zepp 2, we've done Machine Head. This is not in that category yet. So I'm really interested to hear why you chose this album.
For a simple reason, right? Maybe the gods of rock and roll just communicated.
Yeah, well, that's it. Yeah, let's blame it on the gods.
No. I had a playlist on Spotify that I love to listen when I'm on the road with people, friends, or whatever. So like just play those songs, and I called it almost heavy. Songs that are not too heavy, so it doesn't scare anyone, and it pleases most people, and it's still rock and roll. And I Am the Highway on that list, and every time I listen to that song, I want to go back and listen to it again. There's something about it that made me feel like I needed to listen to the whole album, start to finish, and understand the lyrics. So it all starts with one song, isn't it? That's how you fall in love with a band or an album. You listen to that one song and think, wow, this is something else. Where did it come from? I want to hear more of it. So that song led me into the album and actually made me listen to Soundgarden. I didn't know enough about them. So, so that's it.
It's funny because, I've listened to the album twice now, and my first listen through was quite cynical. Like I said, I'd heard Cochise and I'd heard Show Me How to Live, and then I said everything that I said earlier to myself. I said, okay, Gasoline's cool, but it's just Rage meets Soundgarden. Then What You Are and Like a Stone, oh, wow, this is different, very unique. And then Set It Off, and then tracks 9, 10, and 11. Again, I thought, okay, this is very similar to Rage. It's very similar to Soundgarden. But then when the album ended with Getaway Car and Last Remaining Light, it was just the fact that those two songs ended the album. It really transferred my thoughts from it being, okay, these are just the remnants of Soundgarden and Rage Against the Machine, to no, this is a new band, and they deserve credit. This isn't just Rage's instrumentalists and Soundgarden's singer. They've created something here. And so then I went back and listened to it again from start to finish again. And then it was only on the second listen that it became apparent to me that this really is a journey. And what you said earlier was perfect in terms of the three categories: the new, unique, daring stuff, the classics that the fans are going to love, and the beautiful hybrid of both. It's a wonderful album. It really is. Very, very good.
It really, every time we record something, I do my best to listen to the album on the day of the recording to refresh my mind. And I was, on my way to a studio to teach, and then coming back home, I had an interview on for a YouTube channel and loads of stuff going on. So I had to listen to the album in 3 parts during the day, and it became part of my journey. It became part of my day. The feelings in the album, the vibe from the album made the mood for my day, and it's an interesting thing, isn't it? I think that's why we listen to music. We want life to be better or different after you listen to an album, isn't it?
I think that's when you can really tell that an album has imprinted itself on you. The same way you just said that. There are times where I drive to a gig And I know that the journey there is, let's say, half an hour, and the journey back is also half an hour. So I'll pick an album that's an hour long so that I know. Do you know what I'll do? For example, tracks 1 to 6, that might only take 25 minutes. So I won't listen to any music for the next 5 minutes. If the next track is 8 minutes long and there's only 4 minutes between the last track finishing and me reaching my destination, I'll listen to nothing, so that on the way home, I start with the next track and it finishes when I get home. And that's the beauty of having an album that means so much to you. And you know its length, you know how it plays out and what emotions you feel when you listen to it.
Yeah, and that's it. I mean, and it's all about, creating emotions and feeling stuff when it listening to music. And the fact that music makes us want to talk about music, and have a podcast, and people want to listen to people talking about music, because music has such a special place in people's lives. And I think I just hope that we give the recognition that those guys deserve, every single artist producing music anywhere in the world. And it's what life would be extremely boring without music, more than anything else. Anyway,
fantastic. I mean, that sounds like a good place to wrap up the talk about the album. I've actually got a little quiz for you. Question 1. Which country did Audioslave become the first band to have played an open-air concert in?
Wow.
And I'd say it's kind of important, this answer.
I don't know. Audioslave.
So Audioslave became the first band to play an open-air concert in which country?
I'll guess Cuba.
Yeah, well done. Brilliant.
Cool.
Well done.
I might have read about it.
Isn't that interesting? Obviously, Rage Against the Machine being so political,
Yeah, exactly. Well, it has a lot to do with it.
Sorry, go on.
Yeah, keep going.
Yep.
Next one.
Question 2. I think you know this one. Who suggested Chris Cornell to Rage Against the Machine after Zach De La Rocca left?
Rick Rubin. We talked about it at the beginning.
Yeah, 2 out of 2 so far. So question 3. Which famous American TV host hosted Audioslave's first ever live show?
Wait a minute. That was on the Ed Sullivan Theatre.
It was, yes.
Was it? Was it David Letterman?
Yes.
It can only be, right? Yeah.
Amazing. Yes, so 3 out of 3. Right. Question 4. How much did Chris Cornell's Audioslave pay to the unsigned Audioslave from Liverpool, England? $10,000.
There was another band with the same name.
Right. So there's 2 bands, and for Chris Cornell's Audioslave to take it further, they had to pay off this unsigned band from Liverpool. But how much did they pay off? $10,000, $30,000, or $50,000?
Oh man, I think it was about $10,000.
Oh, lucky 30. 30,000.
That's
still good, man. 3 out of 4.
Sounds a bit more.
Yeah.
I mean, I if they could predict the massive success of the band, they could have charged like $500,000.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh
right,
God, that's sad. It's sad to hear that.
Yeah. Right. Final question. Question 5. How many albums have Audioslave sold? 6 million, 8 million, or 10 million?
6 million?
8.
8. That's good.
Yeah. So that's good, man. 3 out of 5. And I'll tell you what, the last 2 questions, you had 3 options. So that's a little unfair. But you got those first 3, and I was really impressed with that. That's incredible. But anyway, that's a fantastic place to leave it, I think.
I've been doing my research, man. Doing my research.
I've got one more question for you before we end.
Yeah?
What is rock and roll about this album? What makes it so important?
Oh. Wow.
It's just so interesting. Like I said 5 minutes ago, that all the albums we've done so far have been the classic albums from the 60s and 70s, and we've gone all the way to 2002, which is absolutely fair. There are plenty of albums in the 2010s, 2000s to do. But why this one? What does it mean to you? Why is it rock and roll?
Do you know what? We talked a lot more about Chris Cornell than everyone else in the band, but I'll keep talking about him because the most rock and roll thing for me is the fact that one man committed to his art and his craft can completely redesign a band and turn it into something else. And that's freedom, that's creativity, that's rock and rollness.
When you said it earlier, when you mentioned the thing about Chris Cornell and not wanting to do politics, I initially thought, how the hell did he talk Tom Morello out of doing political music?
Do you know what?
Maybe that's the kind of guy Chris Cornell is. Maybe he's the kind of guy which you say will do what you want because you're a fucking legend.
Exactly. And maybe Tom Morello was like, all right, you're literally taking me out of my comfort zone. You're literally taking me out of what made me successful, artistically. And now I need to make my guitar sound serve another kind of lyrical content,
Good point, yeah.
And they've made it, didn't they?
Fantastic. Well, great answer, man. I mean, awesome. What a place to leave it. I mean, what an album. Fantastic. I think we've said everything you said, right? It's just a brilliant piece of music.
Yes. Go listen to it, guys.
Exactly.
Listen to our
As usual, guys, there will be a playlist at the bottom with all the songs in from the album. I mean, we haven't actually mentioned any other songs, but what we'll do is me and Felipe will get together. We'll put a few of our favourite Soundgarden and Rage Against the Machine songs in there for you as well anyway, just so if you haven't listened to those bands, you can hear sort of all three of them together, what one led to the other, what one gave to Audioslave, all that stuff. But thank you once again for joining us. It's been another great episode. Really enjoyed this one. Thank you, Felipe, for choosing the album. And in the words of Felipe, you can find us on the internet. So, do all the normal stuff, like and subscribe. Yeah, we're not doing any of this anymore. Just go and find us. Just Google it.
No, because if you're listening to this in 3052, way in the future, you might have other apps, websites, or, alien devices. But if the internet's still there, which I hope it will be, so you can find us on the internet.
Exactly right.
And that's it. Keep on rocking, everyone.
And as usual, long live rock and roll.